Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach. Welcome to another edition of this or that. And what that is I usually give you a question. Sometimes I give you like a multiple choice answer, but you don't have to answer with those choices. You can come up with something else because there are no wrong answers. None. All right, so please comment down in that comment section underneath this video because I do love to read your comments because I firmly believe that I can learn from you and we can learn from each other. All right, so let's get to what today's question is. So today's question has to do with shell stitches. And this isn't something I was actually even going to do a video on because I've done stuff like this in the past, but I got a lot of questions on what is a basic shell stitch? How many shell stitches are there? When the pattern says stitch a shell stitch, what exactly do they mean? Well, I usually try in my patterns when I put shell stitch, I'll put the abbreviation and I'll usually tell you what I want you to do, like 5 double crochets in the same chain, or, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet for an open shell. Things like that in the description when I'm giving you the list of stitches. But a lot of people don't do that. And to be honest with you, there are a gazillion kinds of shell stitches. Let me go over to the other camera and let me show you what I'm talking about. So I pulled out a couple of things to give you just an understanding of what I'm talking about when I say a shell stitch. So if you look at this one, this is a wrap. And here we have 3 double crochets stitched in the same stitch. When I was learning to crochet, we called that just a basic shell stitch. 3 double crochets all stitched in the same stitch. Okay, another example of a shell stitch. Here's one I used on the trim of this shawl. And this is an open shell stitch where we did a double crochet, a chain 1, a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet all in the same stitch. We call that an open shell stitch. All right, here's one on the edge of this blanket where we added a picot. So we did 3 double crochets, we picot stitched so it would land on that third one, and then we stitched 2 more double crochets. Makes a really nice trim. All right, and then we have this blanket down here. This is our Christmas blanket from a couple years ago. And our shell stitches are 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. Some people call this the double V-stitch because you're doing a V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the same stitch. But on this one, we're doing 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. When you're doing it like this, it gives you a place to put that next stitch. All right, and so there are lots of different ways to make shell stitches. If you want the links to these, I'll put that down in the notes under the video. This is a Christmas blanket. This is a shawlette. This one is the rectangle granny, and then this is a wrap shawl. Okay, I'll try to find those and put those down, the links for those down in that description box. And so you can see there are many ways to do shell stitches. Those were all double crochet shell stitches. You can do shell stitches with single crochets. You can do shell stitches with half double crochets. You can do them with triples, or trebles as they call. Treble and triple are the same thing. And there are lots of different ways. You can do 8 double crochets to make a great big shell stitch, or like I said, the 3 to make a simple shell stitch. And so I did this thing, okay? So I went in to the Google search and I put in, what is a crochet shell stitch? And I must have got 39,000 different answers. I mean, seriously, from crocheters that have been crocheting for many years, and then from crocheters that have just been crocheting for a few years. And it's okay, because that means there are lots of possibilities for shell stitches. So when you read a pattern and they say do 4 shell stitches, and you're looking at your work going, I don't understand. Okay, so I'm just going to show you an example of your basic shell stitch first, okay? So I'm turning my work. I'm going to single crochet in that first one. Sometimes they'll have you skip 2 or 3 depending on the size of the shell stitch. Let's skip 2, and in this next stitch we're going to stitch 1, 2, 3 double crochets, all stitched in the same stitch. Then you skip 2 and single crochet in the next. And that's really just your basic shell stitch. Okay, now if they tell you to stitch an open shell stitch, we'll skip 2 again just so that we're separated. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And this is just with 3 double crochets. You can always, depending on what the pattern tells you to do, have more double crochets. That gives you a nice open lacy look. Okay, now what if it says do a single crochet shell? All right, so you would, depending on how many they tell you to skip, you would do the same thing. You'd stitch 3 or more single crochets in that same stitch, and then I'm just single crocheting over just so you can see how that lays. All right, now you can do this with triples as well. Let's say the pattern says stitch a triple or treble. They're both the same thing. 2 wraps. Whoops. I'm going to grab that piece of string there. There we go. So I'm just going to stitch triples or trebles. It's the same stitch and the same stitch. And the truth is, you can do as many as you want. I've had patterns call for 8 triples in 1 stitch, and that makes a really big shell stitch. And when you're doing something that you want open and lacy, you might even go with an open triple. All right, so there's 1 triple, chain 1, stitch another triple. And this is the neat thing about crochet, is once you learn a basic stitch like a shell, then you can learn lots of more stitches or lots more stitches using the same idea, but lots of variations. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just go over here and single crochet. Now we have this nice big open and lacy triple or treble shell stitch. And so a shell stitch, just saying shell stitch, can be a little bit confusing. And that's why I like to put pictures and of course videos show you what to do. Or in the description where I'm listing my stitches, it'll say shell stitch. It'll have the abbreviation for what a shell stitch is. And then after that, it'll tell you what I'm wanting you to do for your shell stitch or your open shell stitch. If you don't know what to do, maybe the designer hasn't given you any pictures or they don't explain to you what you need to do, always ask. Ask the designer, what do you want us to do here? Which shell stitch? And sometimes they'll say simple shell stitch or easy or basic, but that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, because from when I first started to crochet and up to now, which is over 40 years ago, some of the stitches we called certain names back then are called different names today. So don't let that frustrate you. Don't let it make you panic. Ask questions. So here's the question. Remember, there's no wrong answers here. All right, so here's the question. I love shell stitches. I think there are just so many different things that you can do with them, and alternating them, adding them in places, making rows of them. I mean, literally, there are a gazillion ways to do a shell stitch in crochet. And I love that about our craft, because I always say that this is fiber art, and it is, because yarn is a fiber and we're making art. All right, so let's bottom line the question, as I say. So, what do you think a shell stitch is? What are some uses that you do with it? And do you like the shell stitch? It is one of my favorite stitches, just because of the versatility of it all. You know, there's just so many ways to use it. Okay? So, thoughts. I love the shell stitch. I do not like a shell stitch. Oh, there's so many things. It's so overwhelming. And that was one of the questions that I got, was I don't know what to do. Shell stitches are so overwhelming when you look it up. Okay, so let me give you a really cool resource you can look up. It's called Crochet for Dummies. Don't be offended. It's not meaning to be offensive. It's just a really good book if you can get a hold of the book. But you don't have to, because you can look it up at crochetfordummies.com. And it will give you everything you ever thought about knowing about shell stitches. I've used the resource many times. Alrighty, so today's topic was shell stitches. Do you love them or not? Do you use them? I love them. I just think they're super fun. And there's, like I said, it's just so many different ways that you can use a shell stitch. And again, please comment down below, because I love to read your comments. And I'll see you next time for another edition of this or that, or maybe the other thing.